Okay, hi everyone. I want to spend just a couple minutes here talking about small groups and how small groups work. For the next 6 weeks, you're going to be forming up into small groups. Um, and while we often use small groups in our classes, we don't always think about the processes that are involved in those. And so I just want to quickly go through some ideas that people have put together for small groups. Okay, so let's just start with the kind of group that we're forming. Uh, there's a lot of different groups, obviously, but kind of the main three ones are task groups, social groups, and educational or self-help groups. Our group is definitely task-oriented. We have tasks to accomplish designing an app, but it's also educational in the sense that we're working, we have two things we're trying to do. We're trying to design this app, but we're also trying to educate ourselves on how to design an app. So our groups are going to be trying to accomplish the task of getting an app designed, but also looking at how best to facilitate groups, other groups, trying to do this same thing. Okay, so groups are best thought of as systems. And so what's a system? It's a interrelated and interacting set of parts that attempt to maintain a balance. In this case, it's equal workload across the group to accomplish the task. They need to be, they can only really be understood in the context that they're operating. And so our groups operate in the larger context of we're trying to teach ourselves, or not teach ourselves, we're trying to teach ourselves or inform ourselves on coding so that we can teach that to our students. That's the outside elements of our system. The inside elements are inside this class, and then even more specifically inside your groups and how they work. And the things that matter in there are the norms, like how you communicate a group, the power structures that develop within the groups, and then leadership. And so one of the things, well, I'll just leave it at that for just a second here. So some of the things that go wrong with groups that we need to be on the lookout for is an inhospitable climate, inappropriate focus on personal feelings, sacrificing personal integrity, and lack of efficiency. These are really just kind of a list of things that people, when they survey folks about what they don't like about small groups, it's usually this: they're not fun to be in, people don't stay on task, they have to do things or accept things within the group that they don't necessarily agree with individually, and that the lack of efficiency is usually stated as I end up doing everything in the group. I've taught small groups at the freshman level in college for like 7 years, and you always hear, I always end up doing everything in the groups. And I mean, everybody says that, which is a really interesting statement, considering if everybody, every time they're in a group, does everything, then how does that mathematically work out, right? So the reality of the situation is probably more that when we're in small groups, we end up picking up a lot of the pieces that we're good at, and we don't recognize the pieces that other people are working on. So we want to be aware of just truly recognizing all that's going on in the group and not just our part. Let's see, what can make groups work? When everybody shares the same goal. When there's a public agenda, not really public, but when there's an open agenda for those in the group, and everybody in the group has some say or influence on that agenda. Then if everybody has a sense of individual responsibility, that's greatly helpful for a group. And if everybody wants to cooperate, that's also good. Leadership, I have a big question mark here. We have all kinds of types of leadership. So I think I talk about that here in a slide or two down. And so I'll wait to talk about that here in just a second. Leadership has to do with power. So we'll get to that in just a second. So with task-oriented groups, this might be a key slide here for setting up agendas. And this is called the standard agenda. You could Google this, it's all over the place. It has 6 main steps, and you really are going to be walking through this for the design process as well. These steps are embedded in a lot of different frameworks that people develop for accomplishing things. And the first thing to do is understand your charge. What is it you're expected to do here? So like for us, you'll want to talk more about this, but you're not actually expected in the app design part of the class to build a complete app, right? The charge is to design the app, not build it. And so that's part of understanding exactly what your boundaries are in the problem or the charge that you're going to be trying to solve. And then understanding and phrasing the question is important. You'll probably have noticed from my description of the challenge, it's particularly intentionally vague. And you as a group are going to have to do some back and forth negotiating, I guess, to come to shared understandings of what the different terms and essentially what the challenge is. So that's the sort of the second thing you always want to do. Understand what your charge is, then understand what the issue is within that charge. Then you set about finding facts and learning about it. I cannot tell you how often people jump down to that second to last thing, selecting solutions, before they ever do fact finding or setting limits. So you want to find facts, basic information, as your third step in a task-oriented group. Then set criteria and limits around what it is you're going to accomplish. That goes back to understanding, that's a balance between understanding the charge and understanding the question. Then you finally can start working on solutions. And then the very end is preparing or presenting what you did to others. So those are the standard agenda. You want to be, or you want to realize that through the design process, at a meta scale, the different steps are going through these different parts in the app design journal that we're going to be working through. But then at the micro scale, every meeting, you might have a little portion of this agenda in it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here quite quickly. Try to. The things in the system that you have control of are really the process elements, and that's the roles, the norms, and the power. And then the outcome elements, and that really comes down to effectiveness of decision making. And so let's just quickly go into roles. Roles in a group, different people naturally fall into different roles. They're not necessarily the to-do list roles, but they're more like communicative roles that people fill in a group. And one of them is task roles, communicating information and just keeping everybody informed of what's going on. The other is procedural roles. That's more like logistics. And then finally, the climate roles, how to keep the group working together. So those are the three roles people will generally bounce between. Everybody is doing stuff despite what role they're taking, but we need to have somebody keeping sure things are on task, that we know what should be on the tasks, and then that everybody's feeling good about what's going on. So if you have somebody in your group taking care of each one of those things, your group is going to be successful. So group norms are the beliefs, attitudes, ways of communication, and behavior within your group. You want to watch these. These are what sets up that cooperation, obviously. Power is the one that's tricky. We define it as the ability to influence. And questions to think about when you're looking at the power structure in your group is the distribution of it. Who has the ability to influence what? And most small groups that are working cooperatively, the what part will change the who part, right? In other words, there's not one person that's got all the power and everything. There's certain areas that different people have power in. And what sets this is positionality. That means like structural position, like I'm your boss, so I'm the leader kind of thing. Your groups will be horizontal or flat because nobody is the boss, other than the TAs are kind of helping take the lead on the task orientation stuff. So the other thing besides positionality is knowledge base. Now that could be something to watch in our groups, because we have some people that know pretty much nothing about coding and other people that are fairly experienced at coding. The groups could fall into the habit of just listening to the experienced coders, which makes sense when you're talking about learning the actual practice of coding. But in the design part, that may not, those people may not be the right ones to have a lead in design. So don't let the knowledge base of coding be necessarily what sets the power for power within your group. And then finally is personality. We know that different people speak up and thrust out their ideas more than other people. And so this one goes back to the climate. If you have a good cooperative group, you have somebody in the group who is good at balancing voices. So dampening the very vocal voices and lifting up the more quiet voices. So power is really important. You want to watch that in your groups, and particularly you want to watch how that develops in your groups once you're working with students. So, you know, practice it with your groups. Now, decision making. This is like, how are you going to decide? Like the first thing you have to decide is what app are we going to develop? And so there's three normal kind of big ways that people do this: consensus, negotiation, and voting. Negotiation, consensus is you all just talk about things until there's just a general agreement, and it's kind of magically happens. Negotiation is a give and take. I'll give up this so you can have that if you give up something you care about so I can have it. And then voting is, you know, this is what it is, like it or not, yay or nay kind of thing. And so to read the bullets there, consensus is slow, I'll tell you that. Voting is quick, but consensus, you know, keeps everybody happy usually. And voting often leaves some people with sour grapes. Okay, so lastly, this is just a logistical thing. Something you should have for each of your meetings is an agenda. Agreed upon conduct, how you're going to work with each other. This link in this slide goes to the First Alaskans, or a First Alaskans Institute statement that I highly encourage you to read, and I'll link that all over the place as well. So agree on that for your meetings. Set an end time and have a timekeeper to keep you on track with that. Set a time for the next meeting. So make sure before you leave that you always double check when you're meeting again. A lot of these we all just kind of do without thinking about it. Then make sure clear tasks to be completed between meetings. So make sure each person walks away knowing what they're supposed to do before you meet again, and make that explicit. Okay, let's see. That's it. The slide's not really, well, not very important. This video is long enough at this point. So I'll leave it at that and talk to you all later.